Hello.
Give me 1 minute, Roy. I'll just share my screen. I'm actually configuring my AWS thing because I just realized I am not able to log in to my host. That is because of this IP address just not working. Let me just fix this and I will share the screen. Yeah. Give me 1 minute. Should work now. Oh, sorry. My instance itself stopped. How is it? Just a moment. Yeah, that is what I expected. Zero running instances. Hmm, We have stopped to save cost. So let me just start it. Okay. Meanwhile, let's let me share the screen and let me start with the theoretical aspects and then we'll go ahead with the practical ones. Uh, can you see my screen?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So, what we are going to quickly talk about are some things which is like views and DMLs. Now, out of these two things, views will be used the most. Okay, let me be very honest with you. Views will be the most used one. I mean, you will be using views a lot. Okay, but that is not to say that DMLs will not be used. Just a moment. Yeah, so this is not to say that DMLs will not be used that much. It will be used too, but we need to understand what is or where DMLs will be used or where we can really use DMLs. That's really with respect to when we are going to, let's say, load some data into our let's say database, or let's say we are doing ETL ourselves. So there will be many situations. There can be situations where we will have to do our ETL ourselves. In which case, obviously, as you may have already understood during uh, uh, the introduction section of that ETL part which we covered. So we are mostly loading data in case of ETL by doing extraction, and then we may or may not be doing any transformations. Right. So extraction and loading is the main part. Right. Now extraction is entirely logical. Sometimes it is entirely dependent on the other side as to send the data. Right. And what we are left off in doing is we are left off with the loading of the data. Now, once or when we are loading the data, although we will not be specifically covering it right now, but I will be sharing the details of how we can do ETL, especially using MySQL. There are tools or let's say command line options by means of which we can do that, which helps us to load the data. But then we may not be specifically looking into this because we don't want to get diverted from the topic, because the more but I mean, this is like the intrinsic details of, let's say, the data engineering side, and usually we would expect someone else to do that for us. But then it is very good to have the information with us, right? I mean, a data scientist should always be aware of, how the data or how exactly the data is getting loaded, right? So in that sense, yes, I will be sharing more details on ETL. But when we are doing ETL, what we are essentially doing is, as we have seen the examples. So we will be inserting the data. We'll be inserting the data. We will be updating the data. Right. These are the two primary things that we will be doing. But there will be cases when we have, let's say, wrongly entered some data, or maybe let's say we are not able to update the data because there is no unique key and all these things. So in those cases, optionally, we will be deleting the data. Yeah, so we will be deleting the data, or let's say I can say this, that we will be deleting the slash some data. I mean, it's not really advised to delete all the data without taking into consideration the rest of the teams who are using the database, unless and until you say that. the database that you are using is entirely your own, and hence you can do that. Yeah. So yes. Keeping this in mind, so this is where what we are trying to do, both in case of insert and update, is that we're trying to modify the data, and that's the reason why these are also known as DMLs, or otherwise known as, these are also known as data manipulation language. Okay, this is the reason why they are known as data manipulation language, right? This is very often used. I mean, I'm not saying that this is not used. This is really very important. And yes, often than not, this will be used for what? This will be used for the ETL, okay, the ETL side of things, and not for the data analysis side of things. So when you are preparing the data for, let's say, machine learning, uh, when you are preparing the data for let's say machine learning, at that point in time, obviously you wouldn't be inserting or updating any data. of, of course you will not be deleting any data, that is for sure. Okay, there is no question about it. But then yes, we will be doing DML of data when we are doing ETL, and when we are creating, let's say, different tables, a different set of tables, other than the source tables or other than the main tables inside the same DB, to store our objects. So what I mean by that is, let's say, so let's take some practical examples. So let's say I have a source database, which is my BRM system or my banking system. Okay, so I have a source database, which is a transactional OLTP system. Okay, so this is let's say kind of an use case that we're trying to look at. So I'll just mark this. Maybe I'll just mark this as um, use case. Okay. So the source of the data is a transactional data. Let's say the table which we have in this database is S1. And this table has columns like, let's say, C1, C2, C3, C4, and so on, until, let's say, C20. Okay. Now we have this, let's say, target, or my data warehouse, where I have to load the data. Now, this is an OLAP system usually. It's an OLAP system. It can be an OLTP by architecture as well, but it will not be used as an OLTP, if you know what I mean. So it will not be used for online transaction processing. It will be more used for the analytical processing use cases. Okay, so now keeping this in mind, let's just increase some more lines in here. So to load the data from source into target, what I can essentially do is, let's say I am going to write a script. I don't have any software, so I'm going to write a script in Python, let's say, or shell, right, which will do what? Let's say it's going to connect to the source database, okay, or log into the source DB. And then what it is going to do, it is going to read data from table S1, okay, okay, load the data into table T1. Okay, this table T1 is on my target. I have not really written this, so let me just copy this. Let me just put it over here, and let's say this is my table T1, and T1 and S1 has, let's say, just for the sake of simplicity, which will not really be the case in case of, let's say, practical, let's say, scenarios. The target table usually contains more columns. Okay, so let's say the target table is going to contain columns like I don't know, C21, which is like, let's say, some kind of window function. Okay, some kind of window function output which I've run. C22 is going to contain some kind of date time function. Okay, some kind of date time column and so on. So practically there will be more columns. I mean, usually you will see in your practical experience that you will have more columns on the target side for the same table as you have on the source side, because either you are doing transformations or you are calculating something and then you're putting the output into new columns and all these things, right? So keeping that in mind, so what my script, I'm just trying to design the script. So the overall algorithm will be write a script in Python or shell which is going to connect to the source database. right? So connect to the source database, read data from table S1, then load data into table T1, wherein, this is where the complexity comes. So wherein, let's say 1, if the row already exists, then update, okay, else insert the row as new row. Okay, so this is kind of a use case. If you remember, we had already discussed earlier. So this is how we are going to find this. So in this case, what we are trying to do is that wherein by identifying the row of data using some primary key or some unique key, right? What we are going to do is that we will be loading the data from S1 into T1 by reading the data in S1 in those 20 columns and then loading it into 22 columns. When we are doing that, let's say the primary key in our case is, let's say, column 1, column 2, and column 3. So it's kind of a composite key which we have. And when we are loading this, we will have to write statements that if this row already exists in the database, or if this primary key combination exists in the database, then what to do. If that exists, then we will simply update, and then if it does not exist, we are going to insert, right? We may want to write this entire program, but for doing the heart of the, or the core of the operation lies really in here, right? Identifying whether a row exists or not, that is easy. I mean, you can simply write something like this: select count of star from, let's say, T1, right? Select count of star from T1, where the combination of C1, C2, C3 has to be matched. So C1 is equal to, okay, the current value that you are reading. So let's say you are going in a for loop inside your Python script, right? You are going in a for loop inside your Python script, and there inside that for loop, you are doing the numbering. So for each record in data from source. So let's say data from source is kind of a data frame where you have read the data from source. And there, what you're trying to do, this is just a pseudo code, okay? Please don't take it so seriously. This is just a pseudo code to understand how the algorithm is going to work. So let's say the first thing that you are doing is you are opening the connection, okay, towards the MySQL database, and then creating a new variable to count the existence of the row in each record variable, right? So here you are firing this query, okay? So here is where you are firing this query, and you will be storing the output into some variable, okay? Let's say hypothetically, the command may look something like this, okay? So let's say I'm taking the output of this, okay? This is not really the syntax. I'm just taking it as an example, okay? So where C1 is equal to the current value I have selected, right? So each record dot C1, right? And C2 is equal to each record dot C2, and C3 is equal to each record dot C3. Okay, so I'm simply matching if the count exists. So now I'm going to say if V1, okay, is greater than 0, it means there is at least one row. Then what I have to do? Insert. No, sorry. I have to do update. I have to do update. Else, I have to do insert. Right. So the core of the program, as you see over here, is this update and this insert. If I know this, then logically building an algorithm around it is not really a problem. Right. So that's exactly what we need to know. And that's exactly what we need to remember as well. Okay. Of course, I mean, at any point in time, you can go to the documentation and you can try and find out, okay, what is going on over there, or what will be the approximate, let's say, the kind of the commands that you need to fire for the latest version of the software, which is very easy. But overall, the structure of these statements, okay, usually they remain the same. Okay, there is no such issue in let's say connecting to them, because overall they remain the same, and overall their intention also remains the same. Okay, so what I mean by that is uh, so what I mean by that is let me just give me 1 minute. I'm just trying to copy my MySQL connection, and I will be logging in now, so I'm just saving it over here. EC2 user save. Yeah, I'm logged in. So I will be sharing the other screen now. Give me 1 minute. Before that, just to tell you, so the structure always remains the same, and then we are going to motivate ourselves to make changes wherever we see fit. So what is going to be, let's say the basic structure. Okay, the basic structure of the DML statements is obviously going to, so the basic structure, okay, uh, is going to look something like this. So I have an insert statement, I have an update statement. So insert statement look like this: insert into, and then I'm going to specify the target table. I'm going to specify the target table, insert into target table. And then I have options. Options, one option is to, let's say, specify the order of columns, or specify the list of columns where I would like to enter. Or I don't want to specify a list of any columns. I just want to pass on the values in the same order as I have the output in the list of the columns, right? If you remember, I did already insert data into our students table, right? So at that point in time, I did not specify any column names. I simply said values, and I entered the values. Okay, these values should be obviously in the same order of columns which we see in the DDL statement. Okay, what is the DDL statement we fired? If you remember, we did a describe on the table, right? So I can first of all do a describe on my target table, right? And then I can do this. Okay, then I'll understand how will be the best way to insert. Okay, and then we should be able to do this. Okay, so this is what the crux of the matter is. Now this is one variation of insert. The other variation of insert is, let's say I'm going to paste this over here, and here I can actually specify the column. So column 1, column 2, column 3, column 5. Why am I specifying only 5, and why do you think this query is going to work? Okay, why do you think this query is really going to work? Is because if, let's say, I have a table with column C1, C2, C3, C4, and C5. So let's we will be creating one table. Okay, we will be creating one table now, and we can create a table which is something like, let's say, create table T1. Okay, just a very dummy name. Create table T1. C1 has a value int. Okay, and it has no default value. C2. Okay, C2 is let's say again an integer. C3, I'm just going to keep it simple, keeping everything as integer here. C4 is also an integer, but the default value is 10. Okay, and C5, okay, is again an integer with no default value. Okay, so this is the table that I would like to create. If this is a table that I have, let me just put it over here. Then I can do this, insert into target table, which in this case is T1. So I can just replace this target table with T1. And then I'm specifying the list of columns where I would like to enter the data. Why have I selected C1, C2, C3, and C5? Because I know that C4 has a default value of 10. So it doesn't really matter if I'm going to insert the values in there, but we are going to test it, see if that works. Right. So what I'm going to do now, let's say 1, 2, 3, 5. Right. So why I'm doing this is value 1 for column 1, value 2 for column 2, and so on, just to keep it simple. Okay, and then I'm going to look into select star from T1. Okay, let's fire these queries and see how it goes. Obviously we will see. So this is one way of inserting the data into the table. As you see, I have not specified any list of columns, and hence it requires the values of all the columns to be passed on. Exception can be the default column, but then it causes confusion. Okay, so it is always really better to use this kind of a syntax where you are exactly specifying in this column I want to enter this data and so on and so forth. Right now, this will be interrupted. I mean, your insert statements will be failing if you are not taking into consideration the not null fields. Example given. Let's say I'll just take this entire part and I'll again go down to the bottom part, and then I'm going to create a new table T2. And here what I'm going to say this this field is a not null field. Okay, so we can use a not null keyword. This is another DDL keyword. There are thousands of such keywords like this, so we don't really need to remember each and every one of them, but we can clearly understand the context here, right? I mean, we are creating that first C1 column as a not null column or as a unique key, which is something like, let's say, if this table T2 was, let's say, the employees table in your company, obviously the employee ID will always be unique, right? Irrespective of whether a person joins in our organizations or whether they leave, the same employee ID is not allocated to another person. It is usually always a new employee ID which is assigned to the new joiner in the company, irrespective of whether that person is a fresher or a lateral entry. So C1 in this context, we can just try to visualize or try to relate it to the employee ID if table T2 relates to the table of information about employees. Now, in this case, what happens if I just remove this value? If I remove this value from here, obviously I'm going to end up in a result. I'm going to end up in an error while inserting. Okay. Why? Because C1 is a column which is expected, and C1 does not have a default value. It cannot have a default. It can have a default value, by the way. It can have a default value. It can have a value populated by a function and a lot of complications that you can do. So SQL is really a very big kind of subject. We cannot really cover that into a session for, let's say, 10 days. But there are many things or many ways in which you can make it not null, or you can populate values into it. Even during insertion of the rows, you can call a function, and that function can generate you a number, like let's say a random number, and you can generate it over there. So those kind of techniques are also there to have a default value placed in a column C1 or a column like C1, or maybe when we are inserting data. But this statement here, the crux of the matter is this statement over here. I'm sorry, this has to be changed to T2. So insert into T2 with C2, C3, and C5 will fail. Why it will fail is because C1 being a not null column and does not having a default field is going to be problematic. So as you can see, I've already figured out 3 different ways in which I can insert the data, or I can try to insert the data, and there I might succeed and I might fail, right? So in my examples, as you see, the first 2 examples is where I'm going to succeed. This is the most easy thing to do, but then in this case, you need to remember the ordering of the columns, which is not a problem if you are let's say creating these data sets out of a script. Inside the script, you can put the logic, right? The second thing that we have looked into is where I have a table structure with one of the columns being a default value. We have to try this. I am not sure how this current version of MySQL is going to behave, but let me see how it does. Okay, so yes, so that raises one more very important point. It is not always a constant that if you go via the basic ground rules of ANSI SQL, that it will be followed all the time, right? So a very common thing that we have seen even in our case also. I mean, we do know that when it comes to joins, full outer join is really something which is used, and full outer join is something, as we have seen, may have some applications, okay, from time to time. It's like understanding where the data losses are there, or where we have gaps in the data and so on. So it's really a useful technique, right? But then the problem is very simple. The problem, as simple as it sounds, is uh, in MySQL we don't have a full outer join. So we need to use things like union and all those things. I've deliberately not covered union because it's too simple a concept to be really have a look into. I'm sure you can look into it from the internet as well, or if you want me to explain, I can explain. So that's where things might change from database to database, from version to version. So my expectation is that this command or this set of commands is going to work, but that does not mean it is going to definitely work. That's the reason why you always need to have a test bed. Please don't really believe any blogs or any queries which you find on the internet blindly. They may or may not work, and they may or may not be limited by the database and the version that you're using. It's not that always an ANSI SQL statement or a generic SQL statement is going to be applicable to all of the databases. That may not be the case. Okay, things will change. Okay, things will be different, and you will not be able to keep a track of what's also on the changes that are being done into the database from a day-to-day basis, because the technology landscape is also changing very frequently. But we do know for sure, as we looked into this third use case, is where the insert is bound to fail, and I should not even go to select start from T2, because this insert statement will not work, and hence the result over here will be 0 rows fetched, right? So the reason why it will be 0 rows, then in this case it should be output will be, let's say, 1 rows, right? Why is because this statement might really work, but in this case this statement will definitely fail. I have a not null field and I have not entered the value, right? I hope the basic structure of insert was clear. Let's try this out. Let's try this out. So why don't I share my screen? And now what we are going to do, show tables here. So now what I'm going to do is that I am going to do a DML. Before I do that, let me create that table T1. Okay. So I'm just going to make a copy. So let me give me 1 minute. I'm just going to copy paste. So I'll just come over here and I'm going to do a paste, and it's going to create a table. So if I do a select star from T1, obviously there are no rows, and I can do a describe. DESC is the short form of describe, and I can clearly see that I have a table which is C1, C2, C3, C4, C5, where the values are null, 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 10, and null, right? So the default values are null for the first 3 columns. Obviously, this is what we expected. And then for the 4th column, it is 10, and the 5th column is null. Okay. So what if I would just like to try out the first option, which I have already seen earlier? So insert into T1. Okay, values, right? This is row number 1. So I'm going to say 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Okay. So if I look into this now, if I do select star from T1, obviously I have a row of data. So just because C4 has a default value, that does not mean that I can not override that data. Now, what happens if I'm going to do it something like this? I'm just going to remove one of them. Okay, and I'm going to say in the bracket C1, C2, C3, C5. Right? You see what is happening here? I specified only those columns where there are no default values specified in the DDL, and then I ran the command, and obviously now I have the data inserted. And C4 for the second row, I did a blunder here. I should not be doing this. Delete from T1. Okay. Let me just insert my queries once more. I shouldn't have done that. I'm sorry for this. Just for the identification, the first row should be 1. In the second row, I should have done like this. I should have done it 2. Okay. So now that we have done like this, let's do a select star. And we can clearly see row number 1, all the values are 1. Row number 2, all the values are 2 except the default value. Why? Because during the insertion, we did not insert that value. This C1 field, okay, this C1 identifier now matches with this 2. This C2 is 2. This C3 is this 2. And this C5 is this 2. So there is no C4. Okay, now what happens if I remove this? Okay, let me just try another thing. Okay, 1, 2, 3, 4 columns are not having a default value. Let me just remove this list of columns. Okay, let's see. Column count does not match value count. It did not by itself identify that, okay, column 4 is a 1 which has a default value as per the DDL. So let me treat the first 3 as C1, C2, C3, and the last one as C5. The answer is no. The statements, obviously, this is a programming language. Like you have to declare things. You have to instruct. Unless and until you instruct, it's not going to do what you're asking it to do. Right? It is as simple as that. Right? So basically this time it did not work. But then let's try to create another table. So I'm going to drop table T1. Okay, this is another useful, let's say, statement. Another useful statement I have ran earlier. I should show you this, but please don't run this. Okay, please don't run this on any of your tables until you are 200, 300% sure. Delete from T1, delete from T1, and I have not mentioned any where conditions or any filtering criteria. Delete from T1 means you delete all the rows. Okay, so all the data is gone. Unless and until you have good DBAs who have enabled flashback and backup and the recovery things are in place, your data is done and dusted. Okay, so you do a drop table T1, your table itself is dropped. So if I do a drop table T1 and then I do a show tables, then I could see that the table itself is gone. Right now, what is the difference? I would just like to quickly touch base over here. Maybe I'm diverting from the topic, but this is something to be quickly noted. There are 2 points I wanted to tell you. Is that first of all, this drop table command is a DDL command, right? Because you have used another DDL command, which is create table to create a table. Hence, drop table is a DDL and it's not a DML. It's dropping the entire table, irrespective of whether you have rows in it or not. If you had the data inside the T1 table, you would have dropped it yet, right? So it doesn't matter whether you have data within the table or not. The database is not going to give you any errors while executing on any warnings. Okay, so please be careful. While that delete statement is a DML because you are modifying the data. You are modifying the data in the sense that you are simply removing all the tuples, all the entries from that, let's say, relation or from that table, right? So delete is a DML, drop is actually a DDL, right? But then there is one more syntax. Okay, there is one more syntax which is like um, truncate. Okay, the another syntax which we have is, let's say, truncate. So let's say if I had that table T1 right now, I could have said truncate table T1. Okay, what is the advantage of using truncate is that if I do a delete, right, what I did is simply this delete from T1. Okay, now the difference between the second thing, which is delete from T1, and the first one, which is truncate table T1, is that if I do a truncate, it does not usually, and that depends on the database as well, or some of the parameters in that specific DB, usually, or maybe generally, it does not keep a record of the rows that it has deleted, as opposed to the second option where it actually saves a record in some or in most of the databases. It's also known as redo log. So it's also known as redo log, which helps in the rollback of transactions. Okay, we are not going into the in-depth details of, let's say, transaction management and so on. So we may not be really looking into that right now, but uh, here what redo log means is you can imagine that you simply have some log file, in the database which is stored in the file system, and this log file is going to contain information of all the rows which are deleted because of this delete statement. Okay, so that after deletion, if you do not want to commit and if you would like to do a rollback, okay, and if you have flashback and all those features which are advanced, which are really enabled by your DBA, then you will be able to do a rollback and these rows will come back to the table T1, right? So it's entirely dependent on what kind of setup you have and how good your DBAs have actually designed and maintained the system, that you may also get the data back when it comes to the delete thing. But with respect to truncate, it is really very difficult. Some databases might even support rolling back from truncate, but truncate does not follow this route. It does not store anything in this log file, which means there is no record. Usually there is no record of what is getting, let's say, deleted. So that is the reason why in 99% of the cases, you wouldn't be able to do a rollback in case of a truncate. Okay, you wouldn't be able to do a rollback in case of truncate. That's where the problem is. So that's where please be very careful. Okay. Now we have looked into insert. We have looked into insert. Let's just move over with the update statement. In case you have any questions, please do let me know now.
No questions.
Okay. So the next thing that we are going to look into is update. There is a slight change. Okay. So update statements. There is a slight change in the way it is executed. Other than that, just like insert, we can update. There's a slight change. The only slight change we have over here is that update table T1, and we will again create that table, okay, so that we can update, or maybe we'll take one of our existing tables and try to update. So update table T1, and there we can also specify a list of columns optionally. So optional list of columns here. Okay, in the brackets I can have the insert thing, and here the first variation. Okay, the first variation is I put the values. I have to put the values of the list of columns or all columns, right? So if I have provided this list of columns, obviously that's my first choice will be the list of columns. Or if I have not provided this optional list of columns, I have to enter the values of all the columns. But update is different from insert, right? Insert is the case when you have assumed or you already know that without violating those kind of not null constraints and all those things, we are able to insert the data. We will be able to insert the data. So that's really simple. We have not looked into the not null thing, by the way, so we will look into it after this a quick example. Okay, so we will have a look into this one. So let me just say here that update table T1, and then inside brackets I can give optional list of columns, and then in the values I can either give the list of columns which I've set in that optional list on row number 90. If I have given this, then yes, I can give the values only for those columns, or if I have not used this, I will need to provide the values for all the columns. But update's job, or the job of this statement, is to selectively identify that one particular row or many particular rows and update, right? So that is the reason why this syntax has to change a little bit. You cannot really go ahead with the set of columns and the set of values, because you need to be very specific about what you need to update with what value and for what rows. So that's the reason why this part is the first change between update and insert. I'm just going to say set, okay, column something with value something, and I can do this for multiple number of times. I can do this for all the columns. Okay, so comma comma comma, and I can set this. So example given, this is the first update, this can be the second update, this can be the third update to the third column, and so on. So let's say I'm updating column 1 over here I'm updating column 2, here I'm updating column 3 with the value of values, let's say 1, 2 and 3, and then I can go up to the last column in the table. I can take all the columns in the table. Okay, so no problem. And there is one more easier way to do this, which I'm going to show you, don't worry. But this is one way of updating a table. We are setting the values of each and every column. Set is a keyword. Okay, set is a keyword. So set the value of this column is equal to this. Now if I do this and there are no constraints on the table, there are no primary keys on the table, and there is no validation that is happening on the table, then you'll be surprised to know all the rows in the table will be updated. Why? Because there is no constraint which is applied. Let's say if I apply some kind of constraints that no, I cannot have non-unique values in column C1. In this table T1, let's say there is this column 1, COL1, where I always have to have unique values. If that's the kind of constraint, limitation, or let's say boundary that I've already set, then yes, right? Then yes, then obviously this statement will fail. The statement will fail because it has to fail. There is a constraint that is already set up, so this statement is bound to fail. It is in its nature to fail. But if there are no constraints, that it will update all the rows. Okay, so please be very careful which row you want to update. Then what shall you do? If you know which rows are there to update, if you know, then you simply use a where clause. Let's say you want to update the values of columns, column 1, column 10, column 3, where column 4 is equal to 10. Right? You should remember this example that we just looked at right now. where we created table T1 with column C4 with a default value of 10. So wherever that default value is applied, I just want to change the rest of the columns. Let me just make this query complete and I can say this. Okay, so I'm just going to update all the other rows, C1, C2, C3, and C5 with some new values where col4 is equal to 10. And I can even update that column as well. So please don't be under this impression that I cannot update the column which I am using for my uh, air clause. Okay, I can do this as well, but let's do one thing. Let me cut this section off and I'm going to just put it over here because this is another variation of the update statement. Actually, this is another variation of the update statement where I can do this. So I'm just going to put it over here now. Okay, so this is yet another variation. Now, one cool thing or one very silly thing that you observe over here, which has a cool solution, is that here in this case, you are technically updating all the rows or all the rows. I'm sorry, there won't be a comma over here. I'm very sorry for this. This comma wouldn't be there. Okay, the last row should not have any comma. It should end with a semicolon and there should not be any comma. Okay, please don't do that mistake. That will be a syntactical mistake. So in the syntactic check, it will fail. Okay, so the last update should not have comma. Okay, now in this example, the last one, it's a very silly thing because I'm updating all the columns with values and so on. And is there any easy way to do? Because let's say I have 20 columns, then I will need to write 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and so on. So this gives rise to another variation, which is something like this, right? This is something I will have to check. Give me 1 minute. I am not entirely remembering the command. I'm sorry for this. Let me just quickly check on Chrome. Let me see. Update. Okay, so give me 1 minute. Give me 1 minute. Yeah, I think there is a way. I think there is a way. Yeah. Yes. So one more way of doing this, I have to correct myself. It is not really a cool way. Let's say this value val1 and val3. Okay, these two values are now going to come not from your input, but it's going to come as some aggregation function ran on some other table T2. Let's say it's the count of records in table T2. So you can replace this value with select count star from table T2, right? And in the same way, you can actually replace this val3, which is the value for column 3, with a query which is something like this. Let's say maybe in T2 column you have some column C11, and you are taking a max of that column and putting that value into col3. Right, so this is yet another variation. Okay, this is yet another variation where you can actually take data from the command line or take data from another table, and then you can do that. Okay, so this is one way. There is one more way. I just don't want to share that with you deliberately. It's only going to confuse you. Maybe you would like to read about it. If you have any doubts, please do let me know. There is a way in which you can update a table using joins. Right? You can use joins. You can join table A and table B on a certain key column, and you should be able to update, let's say, table A. Okay, basis some kind of, let's say, if else check, or basis some kind of, let's say, case statements or some kind of a while conditions. Okay, so this is something that you can do, but these are the available options. So let's just quickly look into the first thing. The first thing which we missed to do is to create this table and see if we are able to insert the data. So let me just copy, and I'm going to go to my new share, which is my MySQL window, and here I'm going to do a paste. I've created table T2. Let me do a describe of T2, and I could clearly see that it cannot have null values, right? So let me just go back to my notepad, although you cannot see it, and let me just copy this statement that I have written over here, and then I'm going to come back to this window and I'm going to do a Control L. I'm going to do a paste. So what I'm doing, insert into T2. C1 is a not null column, but I'm not giving any values to it. Very bad mistake I've done over here. So C2, C3, C5 are the columns for which I'm entering values 2, 3, and 5, and I would like to press enter. And it clearly says field C1 doesn't have a default value. It is a not null value. You have to enter the value. So let's say that I'm going to enter a value of 3, and then this should work. If I enter a value of 3 and then I say C1, it will work. Now you can do a select star from, let's say, T1, and you should be able to, oh no, sorry, it's a T2. So select star from T2 and you should be able to see this. Now what if I would like to update the value of C5? So update T2, set C5 is equal to 10. If I do this, then I have one row in the table and that one row is updated. So let's make things more complicated by inserting more rows into T2. Okay, let me do one thing. Give me 1 minute. So what I'm going to do is that 5, okay, 6, 7, and now I can do a select. And I have these 4 rows now. Okay. What happens if I fire my update statement once more? It has affected 3 rows, but the rows matched is equal to 4. Why is it saying so? Is because it is checking where C5 is not already equal to 10. And it is updating those. So this is kind of a cool thing that MySQL is doing for you. You could have enforced this by using a where clause, which would have looked something like where C5 is not equal to 10. If I fire this query, the query will run, nothing will change because we have already updated the column C5 with all the rows being having a value of 10, right? Oh no, sorry, I did a mistake. So let me just mark this as C5. Okay. So rows matched is equal to 0 because all the rows are such that I have updated values there. C5 value is always 10. Hence row matched in this case is equal to 0, changed is equal to 0. There are no warnings, right? Now this is internally done by MySQL. Introspectively, you don't have to do this for MySQL. This will be done by MySQL, so don't worry. Update T2 set C5 is equal to 10. This command essentially what it is doing, it has updated the entire table for the column that I have mentioned. So I have mentioned C5, I have to mention C5. If I don't mention C5, right? If I simply say update T2, it's going to give me an error. What do you want me to update? You have not really given me anything to update. So what do you have to update? So I have to give something to update. So I have to say set the column name is equal to the value name. If I don't give the where clause, it updates everything. Now let me give a where clause. Update T2 where, okay, where, I have a very difficult time now. So where C4 is equal to 10. And I want to set a value of C1 being equal to 1. Right? Two things we notice here. If I do a select star, I can clearly notice that the data has changed because it matched all the rows and it has changed the data. That's one thing. The second thing is just because C1 is a not null column, that does not necessarily mean that it has to have a unique value. Uniqueness has to be enforced by means of constraints, right? Similar to the not null constraints. It's a different constraint that we need to apply over there so as to maintain the fact that the values will be unique. Now, before we make a close, let's look into one thing, which is a very important thing. Let's just drop our table. So let's be doing a drop. Let's practice the truncate table T2. If I do a truncate table and do a select star from T2, the table still exists. But am I able to roll back? The answer is no. If I again go back and let's say do do the insert statements. Okay, let's see if I am able to delete from T2, and then I say rollback, and then I say select star from T2. The answer is no. I am still not able to roll back. Why am I not able to roll back? Is because maybe flashback is not turned on in my database. Okay, so you can use commands like show variables like percentage flashback. Right, there is no flashback option here. Maybe I'm using a wrong, let's say, variable. This is a system variable, which we can ask our DBS to find out, and our DBS will be able to tell you whether there is a rollback option available in the database or not. It seems by default in this DB in this version of this DB there is no rollback option. So please be careful. That's what I was saying earlier. So let's see the tables. Let's conclude. Let's drop the table T2, of course. And let's conclude today's session by doing a very interesting thing, which is, sorry, I'm doing a very wrong thing over here. So show tables. I have course table. Let me just describe the course table once. I have this course table over here, and I have enrolled the table. So select star from enrolled and select star from course. So I have two tables, the enrolled table and the course table. Now, obviously, we have looked in joins that I can join these two tables, right? So let me just join these two tables and try to find out, let's say, e.sid, c.name from e will be enrolled. So enrolled, I'm not able to see. So enrolled e course C, where e.cid is equal to c.cid. Obviously, I'm able to join, right? Now, what I would like to do is that I don't want to fire this query again and again and again and again. I know I have history options. I can save the output of this query somewhere and run it and all these things. But I just want to convert this into a very simplistic database format, or a very simple query that I can run from time to time. And I should be able to replicate the same output. This is where a view comes handy. View is just, you can say, a pointer. The same concept which we saw in programming languages like C, C++. It's a pointer to the output of a query. It's a pointer to the output of a query that may or may not take some space on the database, depending on what kind of view it is. You're not going to look into those kind of views which take up space. Those are called materialized views. Materialized views. We are not going to cover this. Okay, this is a bit advanced with respect to data engineering. So we wouldn't be looking into this specifically. But please do so. You can go ahead, look into videos onto YouTube and other learning, let's say, materials, from where you should be able to understand what is a materialized value. It's a very difficult concept at start, but if you master it, it's really great. But it's a bit higher than what we are trying to do, under the expectation that there is or always be a data engineering team. Okay, nevertheless, we want to create a view, which is just a pointer in C. A pointer in C does what it points to a memory location. The same thing is what we are going to do. We are going to create a dummy name, a variable, a view, an object in the database, just like a table, which is going to point to the output of a query. Okay, similar to this query that I fired over here. Usually views are used when I'm doing a join. If I'm going to do a select star from table T1, it makes no sense to create a view, but then you can also create a view there. So a view is created basis the query which is generated, and that query can literally be anything. It can be a select star from T1, it can be select now, and it can be anything. Let's look at a couple of examples. Example first, I just want to know the current date and time. So I do select now. So what if I don't remember this function and I don't like this function at all? So what I say, create or replace viewer, and I'm going to explain the syntax quickly, so don't worry. Create or replace view current day, date as select star from select, no, sorry, select now. So it has created a view known as date. The first thing to notice over here, the name of the view is called date, and you can actually see that in the list of tables as a table. So it is being treated as a table, but it is actually a view. So the operations that you can do on a view is exactly the same as that of a table. Exception is the DML statement. You cannot run DML. If you want to change the data, you need to change the underlying tables from where you have written a query, from where you have created a view. Now I don't have to do the select now and brackets and all these things which I don't like. Let me just go back to this command, and I'm just going to say select star from date. I do a select star from date. Every time I do a select star from date, I'm going to get the latest time. You see the time is changing. Obviously, I'm firing it at a different point in time. So the date and time is changing, which means date, this view date is not a static view. It is a view which is dynamic. That dynamic nature of the outcome is what makes the view really useful. This means that in the back end, somebody, let's say Saransh or Mugdha or someone is already loading data for us in the background tables, in tables like enrolled and students and course. And in the foreground, I have a view which is like a consolidated view of all the students who are enrolled in all the courses and the grades that they have got, and so on and so forth. So I have a combined view using all these three tables, which we can create, by the way. And I'm storing that output in form of a view. So irrespective of what is happening in the background, my view remains unaffected. I can do a select star on my view and I get the output. Now, what happens if the data changes in the background? I get that data directly at the real time or near to real time in that view. So as soon as the data is committed in the backend, I see that in the view. So that's the beauty of using a view, right? I don't have to first of all write a lengthy query. I can save it as a view. So if let's say I have a query which is 30 lines long, I don't need to save it somewhere and do a copy paste every time to execute it. I know that I can create a view out of it and do a select star on that view every time I get the latest result. That's it. So that's the biggest advantage of view. The second thing is if the background, if the backend data of those tables that I've joined using these 20 lines are going to change because there is a data engineer named, let's say Saransh, who is updating data, right? In those tables T1, T2, T3, T4, or students enrolled and the course table, then doing a select star on the view name gives me the real-time value. That's it. That's the biggest advantage. So similar to this function that I've created, I can now create a view on this query as well that I have run. So create or replace view, and there is one thing that I have not explained which I'm going to do now before we close the session. Create or replace view. View name is, let's say, v1 as this. Now, if I do a select star from V1, I don't need to write that humongous query anymore. Every time I write V1, I will be able to get the output of this query. The query which is given in here, by means of which a view V1 is created, which is using the command create or replace. Now, what is the advantage of create or replace is because if a view is already existing, okay, then I can replace it. Okay, I can replace it with the latest version. So let's say where e.cid is equal to c.cid, and let's say and e.sid is not equal to, I just want to ignore this student here. If I update this view like this, I can do that. Now what has happened is it has, instead of creating the view, replaced the view with this new definition. If I do a describe on this view v1, I will be able to look at it from a table perspective. If I want to know how this was created, show create view v1. Let's see if this works. And it gives us an output which tells us create algorithm something something, and we created a view v1 as select of so and so so and so from these tables where so and so and so and so. Okay. Now, can you use this technique? I'll just leave the session with this thought, is that can you do this show create kind of a command on any table? Okay, let's see if we can do that on the course table. So show create table course. and I see that I am actually able to do that, and I can get the statement of how that table was created. This is a very nice beauty which is available in MySQL. In other databases it is a bit complicated to find out this exact statement by means of which I can create. You can ignore a few things like engine equal to InnoDB and charset and collate and all these things, because these are optional things. They are not really for use for a data analyst or for a data scientist. But the rest of the details you can clearly see we are able to extract it, right? So we have looked into the basics of views. Let's make a close over here. I'll share you more information on this. I would strongly recommend that you can look into use cases, right? You can look into use cases where views will be helpful or views are used and so on, right? And accordingly, the concept of views and the concept of DMLs has to be used sparingly, right? So that we can do the relevant tasks uh, wherever they come into place, right? With that thought, maybe let's do a conclusion of this session now. So we will meet again, let's say tomorrow. Thank you.
Thank you. Good night.
Good night.